Well, why did you make me watch Metropolis?
I feel guilty talking about movies and such in a public forum without having seen some of the more seminal works.
So you're saying you have no foundational knowledge?
No,
Uh,
none.
So you're saying you're a hack?
I'm a house of cards.
I see. I see. Well, now that we've watched it, do you feel like your foundation of knowledge has improved?
Or
Or do you feel more like you wasted a couple hours?
I have things to say.
Okay.
It's not knowledge, but I have more thoughts.
Okay.
My quick summary of this is if you just watch like a 2-3 minute trailer, you got it.
If you watched like a breakdown, like, hey, this is like a 15-minute, why is Metropolis important to whatever, you probably...
I think that would, okay, this is going to sound bad.
Huh?
I think that would make the film look better than actually watching it.
Okay, so where do you want to start? Like, I think we should lay the historical context because this is a movie from 1927 and no one's going to watch it. Right?
I think for me, when I watch these sorts of movies, when I read these sorts of books that take place, decades ago, I always love to kind of put myself in the minds of the person who would be the target audience for something like this. So 1927, for the most part, if this is, let's just say 30-year-old guys who are going to be watching this pretty much, right?
Back then, you mean?
Back then.
Yeah.
Sure. It's, guys who were born in 1897 who may or may not have been in World War I, who, are kind of in the midst of the Industrial Revolution or like the end of it. Jobs, cities, these things are all kind of new. Movies have been around for maybe a couple decades and they're getting more advanced.
Right.
So for that kind of person who's seen, some sci-fi concepts explored at least in books and some movies, for them to go and see this in a theater, what was that experience like?
Probably hard to say. I mean, I don't think we're going to be able to
replicate it.
Not really.
But, by learning more about the people in that time, you can kind of see what effect this film might have had.
So what I'll say is like learning about the background of the film and the film itself, it was interesting. It wasn't like I would recommend it to most people, but it wasn't like, it was interesting to watch, to kind of just see like, well, it's a silent movie. What were movies like back then? It's known for, so I'll say it continues or maybe it started a great sci-fi legacy of science fiction media being heavy on special effects at the expense of story.
And what a legacy.
Yeah, because the story is very basic, very like you can sum it up on like a notepad maybe.
Yeah.
But I think the lasting impact is from the visuals and the special effects.
We talked about The Matrix and I brought up something Roger Ebert said, that The Matrix succeeded in the methods, but not the message. 100 times that for this movie, where the message is muddled, but like also really on the nose.
Oh my God.
It just beats you over the nose with its message and whatever. But the look of the film, if you told me that this movie was made in even 1985, like some parts of it, if you took like some frames out of context and asked me what year is this made, besides the black and white part, I would say 1980s for some parts of it.
Yeah,
it looks great.
Honestly, yeah, even now, like it looked impressive. Like not just wow, they did a lot back then. Like no, it looks good now. I mean, you can tell that it's not real, obviously, but
what?
But it like a lot of the effects and stuff come across like really, really great. Like all the backdrops, all the miniatures, some of like the in camera
effects
like
this
shot here
able to achieve. I have
pretty cool.
Guesses on how they did it, but it's seamless the way that it's presented in the movie.
So do you want to like kind of discuss the historical context or historical background?
Or the production, The
production.
The movie was filmed in Germany.
So it's a German movie, right? Yeah. Weimar Republic, 1927. So in between
World War I
and II.
Rise of fascism.
So like, yeah, we can talk about that too. But, But anyway, so what are the major themes of the movie?
The proletariat needs to rise up.
The blood of the workers lubricates the machine.
That is true.
Right?
But it didn't have the same sort of the ending.
Oh, okay. Well, we can talk about that. But it's got themes that are very much in keeping with that time period, I think. Like workers' rights, capitalism, industrialization, the introduction of machines and human machine interface, or coming to terms with the widespread industrialization, I guess.
Yeah, and for them to have gone through World War One, I think that played a big role in this as well.
Right, yeah. Well, it's hard to... I know, like, in that time period in Germany, it was, like, terrible, basically. Like, inflation, the economy was terrible. They just lost World War One. There was, like, competing ideologies where they're, like, fighting in the streets with communists and, like, fascists and stuff like that. So, very much strife.
Strife. Yeah.
In this time period. And that comes across, I think.
Whenever I think of movies that were made back then, it's never something like, oh, the studio wanted to make a movie that appealed to, Indian viewers between 18 and 26 so that they could make money in January. It's not that marketed or cynical or focus tested. It seems like the movies that at least stand the test of time are ones where somebody had a vision and decided to go with it. But when you watch these movies, it's not like you're watching something for entertainment. It's like you're watching sort of a collective, like, outpouring of ideals.
It's like you're reading an essay. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's more like that, where, like, if you read an essay, you're like, well, I'm not reading this essay to be entertained per se, in the sense that, like, I watch, like, The Fast and the Furious. I just want to see cars go fast. You know what I mean?
I have a thesis I can read to you.
Okay. Is it written in crayon?
Family. About family.
But yeah, like if you're reading an essay, you're trying to get something out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sort of like learn something or whatever. So the film almost comes across more like that.
Yeah, they're trying to impart a way of thinking. It's trying to get you to feel a certain way,
as opposed to be just purely entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
But do you want to talk about? So the production of this movie was like
brutal
and fraught with, ironically fraught with, like, exploitation of poor people or its message.
Yeah,
and then also, like, what was the budget of the movie? Do you remember?
Well, so one place I read was like $23 million in today's U.S. money, but another figure was almost double that. So it definitely went over, and the person, I think one of the producers, was fired in between, like, during filming.
And I think it bankrupted the studio. They never got their money back. So I think this movie didn't do very well, like, when it was released. Also, we should talk about, there's like 10 different cuts of this movie. Like, there's 10 different versions of this movie. So which one did we watch? The complete edition?
Let's see. We watched the complete edition. Yeah. So basically, the movie was long when it came out. It was like 2 hours and like 30 minutes. And for ideological reasons, for practical reasons, it was cut down when it was shown in America.
They cut it down to like an hour and 10 minutes or something, right? Like something crazy.
Yeah. So when it came to America, they wanted to take out the Marxist message.
Which is like all of it.
It is all of it. And then in Germany as well, they ended up cutting a lot of the film. And so the German cut, I think in like the 30s, is the one that all the future edits were based on until this sort of 2010 release.
Yeah, so they found like an Argentinian salt mine or something.
Yeah, so before that, they were finding like bits and pieces everywhere, like New Zealand, whatever. But they didn't have sort of a master to go off of, so they didn't know exactly how the story all fit together, which is... It's understandable.
Maybe
after watching,
they didn't get it right.
Yeah, after watching this movie, if you just had, bits and pieces here and there, if it was like a puzzle and you had to fill out the order in a silent movie, I think you would be hard pressed to get it right. And so then they had, kind of a master print that they found, and then they were able to more or less restore like 95% of the movie.
Mm-hmm. So the one we watched was the complete edition. It's like 2.5 hours long.
Mm-hmm. And with the music that was performed at the opening night.
Oh, cool.
Very cool. It was directed by Fritz Lang. Fritz Lang fought in World War I. And the screenplay was written by Thea von Harbo. I'm not German. I don't know. But basically, Thea von Harbo was born sort of into minor nobility and then was an actress.
Oh, I didn't know.
And wrote the book Metropolis in 1925.
Yeah.
She was previously married. And then, divorced, got together with Fritz Lang, who was also married previously. And so the two of them then directed, wrote the screenplay for Metropolis, did a few other films. And then just going on a tangent for their personal lives, apparently Fritz Lang fooled around.
Oh?
Yeah. And Thea von Harbo ended up marrying, I think, an Indian guy, like 17 years her junior, in secret.
Oh,
because it was frowned upon in
Nazi Germany.
Oh, the place she was living in, I'll say. The Times.
Do you want to talk about that real quick? Maybe you can cut this out, but
maybe. But so they did this. They did these pictures together.
Yeah.
And they
these films, these pictures.
These movies, these pieces. And they sort of ended up going their separate ways. So,
okay.
Thea von Harbou, she ended up staying in Germany. She worked for the state and made pictures.
He was a government film producer, you say?
Uh-huh. In 1945, she spent time in a British prison camp.
Oh,
indeed.
Really?
Indeed. And after this, she was one of the, what's the word? Trümmerfrau?
Okay.
Rubble women. Because all of the rubble in Germany had to be cleared. And they just had hordes of...
Oh, geez.
Yeah, they said the people of Germany basically do it. And so there's a lot of women who helped do that as well.
Oh,
so she did that for a couple of years. Eventually, she ended up dying after she had a hip injury at one of the showings of her movie.
What?
In like 1965.
She just fell over at a screening of her movie?
It was 1965. She was a little bit older. And so they were screening one of her movies and she had an injury to her hip and ended up dying because of that.
Oh, okay. Jeez.
Tale as old as time.
And gosh, what a winding road that was.
And then Fritz Lang ended up leaving Germany, came to America.
Right. Well,
and later ended up saying, this movie, it's Metropolis, I don't really like it. I mean,
yeah. So he said that he really liked filming it, which no one else liked filming it, which because of what he made them do and put them through. But he said he didn't really like the movie, actually, right? Like
afterwards.
Afterwards, he didn't really like how he came out, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But just to come around and say it was Hitler's favorite film. It was one of Hitler's. It was one of Hitler's favorite movies.
Ah, man.
Which will make it easier for us when we crap all over it.
That's true.
So
That's
anyway,
true.
it was one of Hitler's and Goebbels' favorite movies, apparently.
Yeah.
And he talked to Lang, the director, and Lang's mom was Jewish, right? He was Jewish.
Yeah.
And
Jewish ancestry.
He's like, hey, we can give you a pass on the whole Jewish thing because you made such a rockin' movie if you want to make movies for us. And apparently Fritz Lang left that like the next day.
Hey, good for him.
Yeah, he went to Paris the next day. So
oh, wow.
Good for him.
And speaking of travel abroad, his initial inspiration for Metropolis was him going to Manhattan.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sometimes it's difficult to remember that not everything has advanced in sort of the same speed.
That's true.
Because we think of the past, we think 1700, or let's say we think like 1500s. We think, it's people living in huts. They have fire. They don't have electricity. They don't have iPhones, supposedly. But then you think of something like the early 20th century, and it was a lot more advanced than I think people remember. Because when I think of early 20th century, and I've said this before, but so much was going on. You had industrialization, nuclear technology was sort of, at least atomic physics, was being researched. You had, lights, indoor lights, there were like cities that were basically open 24 hours a day. You had a nightlife. On the outside, I think it was much more similar to today's world than we give it credit for. So when he went to Manhattan, you can imagine, because of the times he lived in, to have the contrast between Manhattan, which might be something similar to what it is today, less buildings, comparing that with maybe his, German countryside, whatever, must have been, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, even today, like New York City, no other big cities really look like that. You know what I mean? I mean, there's big skyscrapers and downtowns and all this stuff, but like New York City itself, I feel like doesn't, like, when you're looking at it, like it looks.
It's like a different
it's
world.
a whole different thing. For some reason, I don't know why that happened, but anyway. Yeah, so I wasn't going anywhere with that.
Yeah, so he goes to New York City. He's impressed by Manhattan. He decides to base Metropolis, the look, on that.
You know what's funny is like, I said that the story is very weak, and it is. Okay, and it's a lot about the special effects. It's funny that the inspiration for the movie is like the way a city looks. You know what I mean? It's not like I had this idea for a story I want to tell. It's like I saw this awesome thing. Let's show more awesome things.
Well, it seems that the message he adopted was his wife's from the book that she wrote.
Well, she wrote that book specifically to support the film.
Sure.
You know what I mean? They kind of came as like a tandem piece.
Right, but the messages were more from that. I think, his thing mainly came from this. But you say, he didn't just go to a city. I think it's more like he went to city.
Okay.
It wasn't like he was comparing different cities. Like, I've been to 50 different cities, and New York City is so much better. I think it's more like there was nothing quite like New York City. Even more of a contrast.
Like he was fascinated by the concept of like
of skyscrapers
the Metropolis.
Everywhere. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what he saw then.
Okay.
But the special effects, so basically, for me, half the enjoyment of this movie was basically that one shot that they had of the city, where they had the roads kind of in between the skyscrapers, suspended in the sky. I don't know how they did it. When I saw that initially, I thought, oh, it's just like a painting or it's miniatures. But they have, people, they have cars kind of making their way across those bridges. So, I'm assuming it's like superpositioned, whatever.
What I read was, so they'd use a lot of techniques like forced perspective, miniatures, but I was reading and I don't understand it when I read it. But there's some sort of I think what it is more like, if you want to have people coming out of a giant mountain,
sure,
you have a mirror and you cut a hole in the mirror and you have people walk out really far away. They walk out of this little hole in the mirror. But what's reflected on the mirror is like a little miniature right here. So when the camera looks at this, it sees the miniature reflected on it, but there's a hole cut in the mirror where you can have actors doing stuff. So it looks like they're interfacing or interacting with the miniature.
Right.
That's what they did.
Yeah, the Shuvden effects. So we can include, videos of that we found on YouTube that I think were very interesting. But it's amazing what they were able to do in 1925 to make things look, I thought, pretty good.
It's weird. This thing's 100 years old almost. Pretty nuts, right?
Yeah. It makes me disrespect current day movies even more for their bad special effects.
What I'll say about the movie, what was good about it, I think, and this is mostly about the effects, but it's the sense of scale. You always get like a really, like, the city feels huge, or like the machines feel huge. Like you have a really well-defined sense of scale.
I wasn't expecting so many wide shots. I was expecting more close-ups and sort of, flat and sort of flat blocking. I wasn't expecting, to have, I guess, more modern looking scenes. Sometimes you're over someone's shoulder looking at a character. You have first-person shots. You have pretty, good use of fore, middle, and background.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting those things.
A lot of the framing was like very evocative. Like they'd have like very stark, like painting. Like this is every frame of painting kind of like like framing. The other thing about the sense of scale is the number of extras. Like there was a lot of people involved, like a lot of people on screen. They had 500 orphan children.
Oh,
not actually. Well, so they rounded up like poor children from, I think, Berlin or something to be in their movie. They got like 500 kids.
Yeah.
And they made them like stand in cold water for like weeks basically to film this one part of the movie.
Or a couple days, but yeah, whatever. It's still terrible.
Yeah, it was terrible. Yeah. And I was reading, I don't know if it was her or the actress, but they were saying that, yeah, it wasn't great, but those kids got 4 meals a day, which is more than they would have had.
Yeah. I read that as well.
That's kind of like
it was very, it was hard. It's filming this, I think, was a lot of fun for Fritz Lang.
They really put a lot, like he really, like, no, you must do it for the artistry.
Right.
Like when they burned her at the stake, like they actually used fire and her dress really caught on fire, like briefly, like no stunt doubles or anything.
Yeah. And I read that he would have people like run into like sort of the water scene. He would people run into the streams of water.
Yeah.
Or you said when he first saw Maria, they spent 2 days just filming him dropping. Right? Dropping to his knees.
They filmed it for 2 days of him just repeatedly like just dropping on his knees. And apparently at the end of it, he couldn't walk for a while.
I read Kubrick would have people do multiple takes, but
right, but like
it was
better. It was in service of something better. And I still don't think he did like, maybe he'd do like 60 takes of a guy picking up a phone, but he wouldn't do it for 2 days of him like slamming his knees in concrete.
Yeah.
It's hard to know what to even say.
It's fine. So when the movie started, I was impressed. My impressive, my esteem of the movie kind of started really high. And for the first maybe 5 minutes, stayed high. And as more of the story was revealed, and I guess especially after maybe the first act, it kind of dropped pretty significantly.
Yeah.
Because the first scene is, maybe it's just in contrast to what I was expecting, but with the workers going in and out of not the mines, but the machine, the sort of synchronized walking that they had, the music that accompanied it, sort of the abstract machine that they were working on. I thought that was amazing. I wasn't expecting, like you were saying, the sense of scale with the elevators going up and down, and just sort of the desolateness of that set was pretty incredible. So it started off with, wow, it's amazing. And the next thing you saw after that was sort of the city from more of a top level view, which was amazing. That's where we get those shots of sort of the intersection of those skyscrapers. We see airplanes. So the first few minutes were just a tour de force of special effects and scale.
I feel like maybe we buried the lead here a little bit, but so what I'll say is, when you wanted to watch this movie, it's a silent movie, it's an old movie. I was worried that it was going to be really boring, because the pacing of old movies is generally different a lot of the times. And what they found entertaining, like, is like super, like, I just flew in and boy, are my arms tired, kind of like just
basic.
Yeah, or whatever. But so the first hour that we watched, I was actually pretty on board. I was like, oh, this is like,
it did not feel like a movie from 1927.
It didn't feel like what I thought it was going to be like. It didn't have like really overly hammy acting. It was like the pacing was decent. There was a lot of all the visual effects. You were taking them in, and it kind of like kept you going.
Yeah.
So the first hour, I was like, this is pretty good. And then after that, it kind of like really fell off. And then after that, it became more like what I was worried it was going to be like, with like actors doing like this for like 10 minutes straight, or like doing this or like a big problem. I think a big problem with the movie is the action sequences or action scenes.
I was going to say that's something that they had not perfected at the time.
Like they had
stage play. It looks like stage play, like Romeo and Juliet, where somebody's, in profile, like acting.
But it's not exciting. There's a part where I don't even know her name. Maria, the main character. She gets captured by Rodwang, the bad guy, the evil scientist guy. But it feels like it takes 20 minutes. It probably took like 5. I don't know. But it feels like it takes 20 minutes of him just chasing her around like a room. Not like her running away, like climbing over things. It's just like he's literally just following her around in a room for like 20 minutes.
They didn't even have a limited set, but the way it's done, action is not conveyed well on scene. I suppose if they look at the screenplay, it's like Maria tries to run, and as you cut back and forth to that, you expect her to be in more and more danger each time, or something has to evolve in that scene, and they just did not know, I think, at the time how to film those things.
So the idea that they're trying to communicate is that she gets captured, right, by this guy. That could have happened in 15 seconds, 10 seconds. But it went on for a really long time, and the impression that you get is this is supposed to be like entertaining or exciting. Like you can say the same thing about an action movie. It's like, oh, he shoots the guy. You could have just done it in 10 seconds, but it's an action movie, so the action is interesting to watch. This was not interesting to watch at all. I don't know if it was at the time. I have no idea. Maybe it was at the time.
Maybe. The other thing I had to say about the movie was I like that there's orchestra music. I think it keeps a lot of the momentum going, but it's also exhausting.
Yeah,
because
it's unrelenting.
It never lets up.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a bit of a lull, but for the most part, it was just 2.5 hours, just like, and that was kind of hard.
What we were talking about earlier, that like you're starting out from, as far as the medium, you're starting out with like plays, right? That's probably where a lot of the craft came from. Before cinema was like its own thing. You're transitioning from movies or from plays into like movies. So old movies, a lot of it can be like kind of like the acting, the overacting, because they can't say words, right? So they have to communicate everything through facial expression and stuff like that. So it's kind of like way over the top and like hammy.
Yeah, the
corny.
people in the back got to be able to see.
And the people in the back are just like doing this stuff or like doing this,
right? No, I mean, people in the audience, you have to be able to see what's going on stage. So the actors have to be.
So it's a little bit. Well, it's a lot like that, and I don't know. Maybe the action scenes suffer from that, because I feel like action scenes benefit a lot more from like quick cuts or close ups or zoom ins or stuff like that they didn't do as much back then.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah. And I guess I wasn't expecting that many wide shots in this movie.
what they did a lot was like right in the center of the frame, just like staring at the camera and emoting your heart out. They did that a lot.
Yeah. And that's very, like I was saying, when I think of movies from around that era, I don't think I'm going to watch, some kind of complex, thriller about a cop.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be about someone's manifesto, on screen, and they're trying to get me to understand whatever it is that they're feeling. And so, people centered in the frame, symmetry, all these sorts of ideas. It's more sort of religious in nature, more sort of
Yeah.
evocative of those things.
So the story, you want to get to the story? I mean, it's so on the nose. It's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
so what it is, it's like a workers' rights kind of rise up and
Sort of.
kind of.
Yeah.
It gets a little weird at the end when we talk about that, but
You got your main guy,
yes.
Friederson,
Yeah.
son
right?
of Joe Friederson,
Right.
and and Hel Friederson, supposedly.
Yeah.
And so we got this crazy city that was built by the workers who live below the city.
Yeah. So his dad is the
city planner.
His dad's like the architect. Or he made the whole Metropolis, the huge, awesome city. And it was constructed by the workers who live literally underground and spend 95% of their time in drudgery, like literally drudging around. Like they're not allowed to like look above like 30 degrees eye level at any time.
Yeah.
They're just all in synchrony, just like toiling.
Yeah, and if they're not drudging, they're manhandling clock
arms
Yeah.
or like frantically turning like valves, like
Steam everywhere.
just to get that extra 10% of cash flow out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the workers are comically oppressed, right? That's fair to say. Like they dress like they're all dirty and grungy. They're just all black and stuff. And
the people living above dressing all white.
Yeah. So our main character is the chief designer's son.
Reader.
So he's kind of like vaguely characterized as like kind of like a foppish, like it's like a rich kid's son, right? Like he's just kind of doing whatever. And then a field trip of homeless kids comes to his
with our love interest Maria. She just shows up in an elevator, to the above ground gardens in which he is frolicking.
Yeah.
And then says to Frieder, "Look, these are your brothers." Says that multiple times so we, the audience, get it.
Right.
And I don't know if this is...
You can talk about Nazis again?
No. I don't know exactly how this works, but it's very clear in the film that what he's moved by is not the plight of these young children who are homeless.
He doesn't care about those kids at all.
At all. It's very clear
like
that
his eye level does not go to like kid height ever.
No.
They might not have even been there.
The only thing that he cares about is Maria.
For no particular reason.
For no reason.
Except she's attractive, I guess.
And so, yeah. And I don't know if that was just accepted or I don't know what that was.
1920s, whatever,
The Great Gatsby was, he was more complex.
No, I'm not saying it couldn't have been better. I'm just saying that it could have been worse, I guess.
Oh, sure. But yeah, so he's there and he just sees her, falls in love with her there, doesn't really care about the kids.
No.
And then later on, he makes his way to the down below and sees the plight of the worker.
Yeah. So he's like a rich kid's son. He goes down and sees the horrible conditions of all of the people working to maintain the city, sympathizes with them, and then they kind of rise up and destroy the machines that they're like enslaved to work on. But it gets really confused with the erotic fembot dancing, which we have not yet encountered. So
no. So a few things. Very linearly, if I just say it, there's a relationship between our main character Frieder and his father Joe. All right. So Frieder tells his father, Father, you're oppressing these people. And Joe says, And Frieder goes down and he switches places with one of the workers.
Yeah.
And then, Frieder works down there. He ends up being invited to I don't know if this is like a union rally or something.
Yeah.
Basically. But Maria has been talking to the workers and saying, guys, don't rise up. We're going to have a great mediator come in, and he will be the one who brings together the hands and the head.
Yeah. Dude, okay. So, you know what got me? A couple things. So it's like, okay, there's the head, and this great inventor designs all the cool stuff.
Yes.
But it has to be made by the common man, the hands. But in between, very literally, between your head and your hands is your heart.
Yeah.
And so he's like, or she's like, oh yeah, we need a mediator between these two things. And then at the very end, there's literally a worker guy reaching out his hand to the brain guy, the designer, and they're like,
and they don't have someone in the middle, in the medium between.
There's no one to mediate between them.
There's no one in the middle of them.
But thankfully, he's right there.
Yeah, Maria very astutely notes,
oh my gosh, there's no one in the middle here.
But I got a guy here who literally cried out that, he was the mediator.
Yeah.
Earlier in one of the scenes, he said, I could be that guy. And he goes into the middle, and then
so he walks over and he mediates. He literally gets them to shake hands. And that's how the movie ends.
Everyone clapped.
It's just like, we need a great mediator to bridge the gap between the rich and the working class.
You, how do you feel about being a mediator?
Literally grab their hands and put them together. Literally, not figuratively. We need someone to physically do it.
Yeah. I mean, one, I thought it was comical when the guy was like about to shake his hand.
Oh, yeah.
But then they also had our guy, Frieder, go in and put their hands together. But then to just...
Oh, right.
They added a title card or whatever.
That? Yeah.
To just make sure that you knew.
In case the symbolism went over your head. They literally say
they dropped it right on top.
This is the hands. This is the brain. Heart go in between. And then in case that went over your head, they just tell you explicitly.
Yeah.
But so as far as a message, those kinds of ideological thoughts were more relevant to them back then.
Sure.
They were
okay,
whatever. It's not even going there.
Okay.
Then. But I think even at the time, it was received as this is really naive.
Yeah.
Orson Welles hated this movie.
Yeah, he called it naive. People call it silly.
Right, silly, yeah. Which it is. So even it's not like it comes across, it doesn't translate from that time. It's no, even at the time, this was considered to be very naive.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just they shake hands and they're even though their whole city, the machine's destroyed, they have no electricity, and the entire undercity is flooded completely.
Yeah.
They're fine now, I guess.
I mean, yeah, in America, so this film was released in Germany, and then when it came to America, they had to cut it down to get rid of some of the Marxist thinking. But honestly, you look at the end of this film, and what does it really say? It says workers don't rise up.
Right. That's
shake hands with the rich people.
That's the weird part.
It's such a weird message.
So the the brain guy, the architect.
Yeah, Joe. Was it Joe? J-O-H?
J-O-H. Yo, probably in German.
Joe.
I don't know. Whatever. The architect. Ergo, the architect guy. So you'd think in a really basic proletariat Marxist ideology movie, right? The workers are oppressed comically. They rise up, and then they kind of remake society, or they make things better for themselves. And the rich guys are portrayed as just taking advantage and kind of parasites or something. But in this one, he's portrayed as it's almost like a stentorian, father knows best kind of thing that they're going for. It's we need both of them. We need a smart guy because you guys aren't smart. We need a smart guy to think of all the stuff to do. We just need to do it with compassion or something, he's not portrayed as a bad guy.
Yeah, really, at the end of the day, did the head
suffer anything? Any consequence?
Did he say he was going to make any changes
at
all?
No.
But the workers are going to go back to work, presumably?
Presumably. They gotta dredge out that water.
Yeah, make sure their kids are okay.
Okay, so that's the other thing, that you're getting at is at the and they decide to rise up and destroy the machines to bring down the man or whatever.
The mensch.
The man. But in doing so, they like screw themselves over really hard, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the messages don't rise up, I guess, because they're propelled to rise up by like a false idol, which we haven't gotten to any of the sci-fi stuff yet.
Yeah.
But so they take out the machines and it floods all their houses, and also they just kind of forgot about that their children exist, and because they're too busy frolicking on the graves of their enemies or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
right,
right.
It's like a scene from like Willy Wonka, basically.
Yeah. So they take this out. They don't gain anything. They destroy all their homes. They would have killed all their kids if the main characters hadn't rescued them, but they had nothing to do with that. So what's the message? It's like, it's almost like, yeah, don't rise up because you might stupidly like ruin your own life.
Yeah. And so it beats you over the head with this message, but the message is sort of muddled and to me doesn't make sense. One thing that I watched this movie, and watching it, I was thinking, this is cool. There's a lot of, cool visuals and everything. But I suppose nowadays, when I say something is science fiction, something is fantasy, usually, at least with the science fiction portion of it, the purpose of that work, at least a big portion of it, is to explore sort of concepts that don't exist in our world today, but that could exist, right? What would happen if androids existed? What would happen if we could, travel to Mars? They explore that concept and then sort of explore what people would do in those situations. With this movie, really the sci-fi elements were only there to further the plot or to make the story a little bit more complex. It wasn't the other way around.
Yeah, that's true. But, you could say the same thing about the original Star Wars, maybe. Like, it's not really about the sci-fi stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we have X-Wings now. It's going to change all society. It's just kind of like the setting.
I think there's a happy medium where the two things work together. And nowadays, I'm more disappointed when you have the sci-fi concepts, but they don't really mean anything to our characters. In this particular case, I think it's like the opposite. It's not a fault. I mean, this film wasn't trying to do that, but
it was pretty weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole thing with the android, why have that at all? It didn't make any sense. It was super weird. That's the part that makes it probably the most iconic thing.
Yeah.
And
if you wanted to, magic and stuff existed. If you wanted to, you could have replaced android with, we're going to cast a spell and reanimate this woman, this dead wife of Joe Peterson, and just give her the body of Maria. You could have done the same thing with magic.
Yeah.
But by doing it with Robot, it created an icon.
Right. So I think that's what most people think about. And the robot part doesn't make any sense.
No.
He makes an android he seems to imply that. Oh, gosh.
So Rotwang, the scientist,
yes,
who the actor was married to our screenplayist, Miss Von Harbo, and before she married Lang. Anyways, he's the actor in here. Rotwang, the actor, Rotwang, the scientist, was in love with the same woman that Joe Friederson was, Hel. And
the name of the woman is Hel.
The name of the woman is Hel, H-E-L, which is whatever. And Joe married her, had a son, Frieder, who's our main character. Rotwang was upset by this. He ended up, somehow or another, recreating Hel in android form. That's what he says.
That's what he said.
And I assumed that meant she had the memories, the temperament of Hel, even if not the appearance.
But she had nothing.
She never had any of that, because what happens is Joe goes down, he sees Maria having the workers rise up, says, hey, let's make this android of yours look like that Maria so she can sow discord. And Rotwang does this, but when this robot android comes to life, she is not. I mean, I don't know what Hel was like, unless they got it completely right. But
so she. Okay, let me just back this up. I'm gonna just succinctly outline what it is they're doing, because it makes no sense.
Yeah.
So, there's a communist uprising. I'm going to implant somehow my dead crush, who I was in a love triangle with, but I didn't marry. I'm going to implant my dead crush onto this android robot. And then I'm going to take the face of the rebel leader, Maria, and put her face on the robot to...
Yeah. So just so I can try to sort out these motivations, the workers want to rise up and stop working on the machine, let it die, etc. Maria, the real Maria, says, wait, there's going to be a great mediator who's going to come down and we're going to solve all this. We're going to have a good negotiation. We're going to renew our contracts. Everything's going to be fine. Joe, the city planner, sees this and says, no, let's send your little android in there who will make her look like Maria, and she will sow discord. I don't know what he expects to happen. So we'll send her in there, and what he wants is for the workers to rise up because he wants an excuse to put them down.
Right.
And then Rotwang,
oh god, the scientist guy,
the scientist who loved hell, who does not like Joe, says, okay, my motivation is to destroy Joe, Frieder, and sort of the city that you built.
Yeah, but it's not clear why. Like, why does he want to do
suppose
that?
it's jealousy, anger at Joe himself for making him use his android in this way.
The whole thing makes no sense.
No, I mean, it's very convoluted, the motivations everyone has.
And they kind of come out of nowhere. You're like, what? Like,
sort of.
What's going on?
If you really dig deep, maybe you could think of something. And then finally, we have this android come to life. Apparently, by the way, that suit was very uncomfortable, and the actress had like cuts and stuff.
Yeah, they put her in that suit, and like, yeah, they made it out of wood filler or something, or whatever. But yeah, they put her in the costume. It was not comfortable at all. Oh, also that transformation scene where she's like sitting in that Fifth Element glass box or whatever. Apparently, like they took so long to film that scene that she like almost suffocated in there because there like was not air. She like passed out in that box,
dude.
All of that in service of you know, it didn't make any sense. Like, at least make it make sense.
And then the android, the costume was sort of the inspiration for C-3PO, which I think is very obvious.
Oh, so when you see it, it's like, well, even when I watched it, I was like, oh, it looks like C-3PO.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently that was on purpose.
Yes.
The other thing is the Rotwang, the scientist, his robot hand. Apparently that was the inspiration for Dr. Strangelove.
Oh.
The doctor, he has like one hand like that too. The more you know. So he the scientist invents this robot, right? He invents a robot person. Pretty big news, I would imagine.
It's just a plot device.
And he also invents a way to use magic electricity to somehow implant the face and body of anybody, I guess, onto that robot. So it looks exactly like them. And then what they do immediately afterwards is the robot goes to like a nightclub and dances so erotically that it drives the rich aristocracy insane to the point of killing each other.
Yeah.
Like that's what happens for like a while.
I suppose if Rotwang's true intentions were to bring down the city, this is aiding in that.
But the thing is, like, the robot does nothing that you couldn't just do with a person. Like, it doesn't use its robotness in any way.
So that's what I mean. It's just a plot device. I don't know where he got the inspiration for doing the whole android thing in the first place. I mean, part of it is from Frankenstein. I mean, how can you not look at that and think, at least some of this is Frankensteinian?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like 100 years earlier.
You're going to cut the clips of those guys, like, leering.
Constantly. Right? That's going to be...
Oh, my gosh. That is
play throughout.
Textbook leering.
Yeah. Those guys acted well.
But that's it. Like, she just goes and, like gyrates so well that the society almost implodes.
Yeah, and there's some...
But what was the point of that?
There's some 7 deadly sin stuff thrown in there.
Oh, God, I forgot about that. There's a lot of biblical stuff. There's a Tower of Babel. There's references to, like, the Antichrist or something. There's, like, the 7 deadly sins on top of your erotic android dancing.
Yeah.
It's like, Dude, the other thing that gets me, do you remember when he goes down there and hears, like, her sermon for the first time?
Mm-hmm.
She summarizes the first hour that we just watched in like a 5-minute story. You know what I mean?
Oh, the Tower of Babel?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, there's a smart guy that makes a thing and he oppresses all the people under it. I'm like, oh, well, that's what we just spent an hour learning.
Club. Just.
Yeah. So all that stuff, and by the end, again, it's more action, which is again not satisfying.
The interpersonal action is not as satisfying. I think the set pieces that they have with sort of the city breaking apart, there was a lot of thought put into that. At least
true. I was
elevators falling, water sort of overflowing.
So bored already that we didn't connect, I guess.
Yeah, I mean the action has to be motivated by something, and there has to be something sort of at stake. I guess there were some stakes, but
a lot of stuff just kind of nowhere. Like the machine, like, when you break it, it floods everything. Like, I don't know.
I mean, it felt like it was going to be some kind of, the workers, they stop working. The machine kind of falls apart. The city, implodes basically on itself, and it just keeps on going and going and going in that direction. But then it's capped by, well, what about the children? We need the heart. We need to stop. And they work again.
Yeah, it was mostly about children.
Yeah, I don't know how they sort of cut off what I thought the message was, and then
so all the workers get really mad. They destroy everything. They almost drown all their children because they just forgot that they had children until someone says, "Hey, where are your kids at?" And they're like, "Oh."
They just look at each other and just like immediately start flailing.
Yeah. And then like 5 minutes later, someone says, "I got your kids." And then immediately they start like, "Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Amazing."
They're not portrayed
intelligently
or generously. It's not a generous portrayal of them.
So, why do you think that it is that this movie, I don't know about you, but I don't know about any movies from 1927 /20s /30s or 40s. I don't know about any movies from back then, but I know this one. Like, I've heard of this one and I've seen that thing.
Yeah.
Why is it? And, it's they went through all this trouble of like digging up like old Argentinian salt mines and like restoring it and all this stuff.
Salt mines are some place that they keep film because of the conditions. The film doesn't deteriorate as quickly.
Oh, okay.
There's a reason it was kept there. It wasn't just some Indiana Jones type. I'm going to hide you in a salt mine.
It's like chained up.
Yeah.
We forgot to mention that Giorgio Moroder made his own cut of this movie.
Yeah.
So I read apparently he outbid David Bowie for the rights to this movie, and then he made it and he redid the score
with
Freddie Mercury, Pat Benatar, like a whole bunch of really famous people did. And also I heard that movie was widely regarded as craptastic. So.
Yeah.
Anyway,
let's just watch some of it.
Oh yeah, okay. Oh my God.
The Giorgio Moroder version was
enticing.
80s.
Yeah, that's true.
And colorized.
You know what's funny? We haven't mentioned this yet, but the film still applies today. A lot of the themes, right? Like,
sure,
it takes place in the dark nightmare future of 2026, where the super rich are exploiting like masses of
there's class struggles shown in the film, but the message is so
the message,
I don't know what the message is.
It's so weird. It's like hitting you over the head with its message, but the message the message is not clear.
No,
it's you need a heart to mediate, but what the hell does that mean?
Basically,
what does it really mean? Nothing.
Yeah, it means nothing. It's like the film basically ends with like Elon Musk shaking the hands of somebody who works in a factory.
Yeah.
And there's nothing changed.
Supposed to imply some sort of understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really know what they were trying to go after.
The symbolism is way over the top. Like, again, the drudgery is comical. And it's way on the nose. Also confused. There's like a lot of interpersonal relationship drama that is all over the place.
Yeah, and there's many different cuts of this movie, but it was cut for ideological reasons. It was cut like the American version because they didn't like
cut for money reasons.
Because in America they didn't like that Joe's wife was named Hell. Yeah, that would be off-putting. They just took away that entire plot thread altogether.
It's funny though. I could see easily you could take it out
better. Yeah,
I could. The director was pretty upset that they cut the movie that much. He said that. What did he say? I like film, so I will never go to America or something because they cut his movie like an hour out.
Well, ironically, he was inspired by New York.
But I could see where this movie would be a lot better if you cut an hour out.
Mm-hmm. If you just had it to where Joe knows this guy Rotwang, and he's a scientist guy who he knows is working on his android, and you leave out the whole hell thing, you leave out all of Rotwang's motivations, and you just have Joe say, "Hey, you got this android, make it look like Maria, make it so Strife, and that way we can put down these workers. Let's have them rise up. That way we have an excuse to put them down."
Which you could easily do.
You can easily do, and just take out Rotwang's parts after that. Then I think it would be a much cleaner movie. You wouldn't have to worry about all these strange, conflicting motivations, and the ending would basically be the same.
Yeah.
The only thing that you would need to add is, I mean, the one thing that is missing from this is some kind of concession, anything from Joe. If you had that, then there would be an actual message that is.
You know, it's funny. It's a silent movie, so they have like the dialogue cards.
Yeah, you
could change this to be whatever you want.
Yeah, right now you could change it.
Yeah, so you could make all sorts of crazy rewrites.
Whoa. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'll say one thing. Did you read the actual main character, Raider?
Mm-hmm. He was an extra.
He was an extra. So they had another guy that was the main character, and I guess he was slacking. And then the director's wife, Von Harbaugh, was like, "Hey, that guy looks pretty good. He's a pretty handsome dude. Make him the star."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Okay," and so he did.
Yeah, black and white films were weird, man, and how people look.
Dude,
and
he's like
kind of
40 or
makeup
he
and
looks
everything.
pretty old. He's supposed to be like 20 or something.
I think
right?
The younger he would have been, the better. Like if
the more sense it would have made.
Yeah, the younger. Like if he had been like 18, 19 even, it would have made more sense.
Because the way it is he's like frolicking around, and he somehow doesn't know that workers are grudging around in the underbelly of the city, but like he looks like he's 39. He would know that.
Yeah.
And then, he's so naive. He goes down there and he's like, "What?"
Well, I'm not going to be completely surprised by naivete in that person.
But that old?
Sure. Well, at least in that position, sure.
Like, "Father, I didn't know this was built on the backs of the Undercity." Like, you knew that there was a place called the Undercity, right?
Yeah. And then Joe Friederson, he looks, I think, like an older Michael Fassbender. There's some actors in here who you think, what would their careers have looked like, in the 1990s or, current day film? And I don't know how many of them would have adapted to
so hard,
movies these days. But at least the father, Joe, the actor who played him, the kind of severity of
he has a presence.
Yeah, he has a presence. His eyes, he's
definitely not like a wacky, corny, whatever like the other ones are.
Yeah, so I could see him doing well enough, and like Tarkin or something.
Well, I don't know. What, did he do anything after? Probably not, right?
Yeah, we could look it up.
Whatever. What else you got? You got anything else?
I don't know.
There's just a lot of things in it. There's just a lot of things that are just comical. Like there's a part where like the city's going like being destroyed, that the workers are revolting, and then the rich people having their like Great Gatsby party, or I think the line is like literally like, "Let us dance while the devil takes the city," or something. Like I don't know. You have to show it, but on the nose.
Crazy on the nose. Look, the message of the movie. I mean, you could teach a college class on what that time period was like, what workers' rights were, etc. I guess for us, for the reason I really wanted to see it was just to see visually what kind of effects were possible at the time, and sort of see the inspiration for the stuff that would come after. We talked about Star Wars.
Yeah.
But
that's the thing I was saying, like, why did this movie stand the test of time, or why is it regarded so?
And I think mainly it's just his, I'm going to say at the time, bizarre choice to use that android as that plot device. It could have easily just been a reanimated corpse.
The android is barely in it. You know what I mean?
Right. But it's just so, I mean, it featured heavily in the advertising at the time, and it's just so iconic. So that, plus that one shot of the city, just so well done. It just takes you to a place. It makes you sort of escape the current reality and kind of takes you to this sort of future world.
That is true. I mean, you really do get the sense that you're not in your current time. It really communicates that well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe that's the reason why. But
it definitely doesn't. Story-wise, it does not deserve to be in, those lists of just the best movies. I don't think.
No.
I
mean, I feel that the best movies hold up, I guess, because human beings don't change that much.
No,
that's why you can
watch you can listen to Aristotle's. Wait,
you better make yourself look dumb.
Yeah. You can read like Greek tragedies and you can still sort of understand motivations and, plots and mystery and all that.
Yeah. So heavy on effects, weak on plot. The tradition continues.
Yes.
Yeah. But did you like it or?
Yeah, I liked it. Okay. I'm happy we watched it. I think it was good to see those things on screen.
It was interesting to watch, but not entertaining, if that makes sense.
The first hour was entertaining. After that was downhill. It's definitely a conversation starter.
But now we can say that we watched it. Like, oh, have you seen Metropolis?
That's right. Yeah, lording this over other people. Has been the goal for a while.
Right. Yeah. Life goals. we always end like
deflated,
like we're puffing ourselves up, and then like at the end we're just like, you know.